Hi everybody and welcome to the latest video for this channel. Today we're going to talk about a few updates about the projects that I'm working on. I'm going to answer a few of your queries. There's going to be a few shout outs, so let's get straight into that. So the first thing I probably should talk about is the latest upload, which was an excerpt from Don't Mention the Reptilians 2, and that features David Eckhart. Now, surprisingly, a lot of people are not really familiar with David Eckhart's work, despite him being featured on the Fact or Faked episode where he produced the what looks like an entity. David has to still find ingenious ways of hiding cameras, using mirrors for reflections, using water to slow down the photons to capture the entity's image. And on this particular piece of video that they used on Fact or Faked, that piece of video could not be debunked by Fact or Faked, and it hasn't been debunked since. And you know, I think David should probably be a lot better known than he is in the realm of the reptilian research. And through the help of Lon Strickler, David's stuff is getting out there slowly. So I'm hoping that David's inclusion in this film, in the sequel, will open people's eyes to his experiences. And David seems like a really great guy, really laid back. He did a recent interview for me for the film, but we're going to catch up soon on Skype, and I'm going to delve a little bit deeper into some of David's experiences. But just some of the images that if you search David Eckhart on Facebook, if he's kind enough to friend you on there, you can have a look at some of his images on there. If you tune into Phantoms and Monsters or Arcane Radio, which is Lon Strickler's show, you can hear some interviews with David, and I'll probably put a few links there in the description down there. So if you're looking there, so that's really the first shout is to David's interviews with Lon Strickler, and I'm hoping to do one with him myself. And David has also done an interview on Cosmic Switchboard, which is run by a good friend of mine, James Bartley. So while speaking about James Bartley, James has just recorded an interview for me in Oz, which is where he lives. And interestingly, what we did with that is, because especially during lockdown, this has been quite difficult to arrange, getting a cameraman to you know, getting around all the restrictions and whatnot. So while we were filming Don't Mention the James's piece for Don't Mention the Reptilians 2, James and I had been talking about this project that, and you might have heard me mention it in the past, which is something called Milab, which stands for obviously military abduction. But we'll get to that after this. But James also recorded his piece for that in the same interview, so I'm hoping to have a little excerpt of that up on the channel very, very soon. I'm just waiting for the footage to arrive from Australia. So what are we on? The previous video to that, I had a lot of questions on Facebook, and a lot of people really loved the place that this is the Elusive 2 promo that I shot, and that was shot relatively local to me in a relatively small piece of woodland, if I'm being honest. And when you're shooting promotional stuff, what you can do and what you should do is utilize these places that look beautiful, because essentially what the main feedback coming off the back of Elusive 1 was how beautiful it was shot. And that, personally, from my opinion, is that it could have been done a hell of a lot better. And what it actually was is the fact that Britain is a really beautiful place, and despite what I think a lot of people from Canada and America and Australia think, I think some of those guys, and when I've conversed with them, they have this opinion in Britain is sort of like this little concrete jungle, and they think that London and Manchester are these, and Birmingham and the cities are all that we have. But this ties in directly with the Bigfoot stuff and the cryptid stuff, because there is a lot of unused land and countryside, beautiful countryside in Britain. Certainly the Lake District is known world over. I think it's probably one of the most visited places in the world, the Lake District. But this was shot relatively close to me, and I had help from a guy, a friend of mine called Marius, who was the drone guy on that particular day. And what you got to do, you never really know what you're going to get. You can have shots planned in your head when you arrive, and you can. I always have the thing. I had a few storyboard blocks on a sheet of paper that I'd drawn out that I just sort of knew what I wanted to do. Very similar to the first teaser that I put out for Elusive 1. And with a lot of this stuff, you just got to walk the shot, and you got to wait for the weather. And it just so happened when we turned up that day, the timing was just perfect. We had some early morning mist, and the sun was just coming up, and with this amazing shot with the light rays coming through the forest. And a lot of the time, I mean, you can plan for that stuff, but you just got to put a lot of days aside and keep visiting, and that means all the team that are doing that have got to be there, and we have to wait for this key moment. And it just so happens that day all the pieces fell into place. Marius's drone work's incredible, and really every shot, I don't think we shot, there's probably a handful of shots that didn't make the cut, didn't make that promo. And I think that's, I've been conversing with a few guys recently that are getting into filmmaking and whatnot, and I think that is one of the pieces of advice that I would give. When I got into this, and I kind of still do this, people will say to you, well, if you shoot too much, at least you can throw that away. If you don't shoot enough, then, you got to go back and film some more. So less is not necessarily more. But what I would add to that is that if you have a picture in your mind of how you want something to look, write those shots down, maybe even storyboard them, find similar reference images and just piece them together in Photoshop in sequence, and you can sort of, from those images, you can then write your narration if you want one, and you can start to build this thing and give it an identity and even give it a flow. And that's the thing with this. And then you've got to go and pick the music. So what I tend to do when I'm doing these things, I'd storyboarded that entire sequence in my head. I already knew. Partially, 50% of it was probably down on paper. We looked out with the opening shots with the sunlight. But one big piece of these cinematic sequences is that you've got to find the right piece of music. And we were just fortunate with everything else, because there is a massive element of luck with filmmaking, and I don't think anyone will tell you any different. Certainly in Britain, with the seasonal changes that we have, that our seasons are all in one these days. And it can be sun shining one minute and pouring down with rain the next. So you've just got to really utilise and be flexible with your idea sometimes. And if you're on the spot, you've got to utilise weather phenomena. And a lot of this stuff sometimes is, you might be in an environment where you really like one certain scene. But what happens with a lot of this stuff is that because these are public places, you're having to work around the public. That day we were very fortunate. There was barely anybody around. But it's all really about having it in here and knowing what it is that you want. And I think the secret to Elusive 2, what I wanted to do with Elusive 2 is make it, every shot just look beautiful wherever we're, because for Elusive 1 I did I think it was 3 trips to Scotland. The footage from 3, was it 3 or 2? Whatever it was, but I just didn't get enough footage from Scotland, and that's one of the things that I regret, because it's just a beautiful place. So going forward, the plans for Elusive 2 is that to make it not only musically cinematic, but really to show off Britain at just how beautiful it really is, and then get into some of these remote locations, and then and bring forward new witnesses, which brings me nicely, after that long waffle, to witness accounts. So what I wanted to do is make an announcement, really, where for Elusive 2 I am looking to interview witnesses of cryptids. So if you've had a cryptid sighting and you're from Britain and you're interested in appearing in Elusive 2, drop me an email here. Give me, in that email, if you could you can either give me a voice recording talking about your encounter if you want to do that, or you can type me an email out describing what happened. And if you've seen Elusive 1, you'll sort of see the way that these things are put across. So very little of it is left out. I kind of like to keep things as raw as possible, and that way I think you keep the encounter honest. And of course, once we've made contact, we can converse, Skype or Zoom or whatever, and we can talk about this. But I'm certainly looking for Bigfoot or Dogman sightings in the UK. One element that I might include in Elusive 2 is the big cat sightings. So the big cat sightings and the research is one thing that I'll be doing myself. That will feature in Elusive 2 because I know many people have attempted to get these cats on camera, but that is one of my key goals, is to finally get one of these cats on camera, whether it be night vision or thermal. We know where they are. We know witnesses that know where they are. So I think if we give enough time to that and commit enough time and resources to that, we will get one on camera and get the proof that many people want. I mean, most of us know that the cats are out there. The government certainly know. So, and I think it'd be fascinating. It's the one thing I think when you're dealing with cryptids and it's something that could possibly be paranormal, if you want to go down that road. As Paul Sinclair will tell you, the 2 years that I was working with Paul, you can be there every night. Paul and Andy and Steve and Bob, they go up to Benton every night trying to get the lights or trying to get these cryptids. And you're dealing with a phenomena that is, it's ultra elusive for a number of reasons. So at least when you're dealing with these alien cats, as we'll say, or these out-of-place animals, these cats that shouldn't really be in Britain, at least when you're dealing with big cats, you have an opportunity to get these things on camera. These are real flesh and blood creatures. The behaviour is almost predictable, and I think that they can be attracted into areas, and certainly the behaviour does feature patterns. So I think that that's something we can get into. So back to the Milab project. The Milab project is something that I've been planning for years, and the Milab project came off the back of Don't Mention the Reptilian 1, because the more and more people and ET abduction people and contactees that I was speaking to, there was this military element and this military involvement, aerospace involvement, that was not necessarily being included in some of these big productions that are out there at the moment by some of these figures in ufology, that either are not necessarily interested in the military aspect of this, which I find baffling, or are deliberately leaving this stuff out. A lot of people call them gatekeepers, but we don't need to get into that stuff. What we do need to get into is talking about this stuff. So if you're not entirely sure what a Milab is a military abductee. So a military abductee will be an ET contactee or an alien abductee. And once the military got wind of these individuals that the ETs were abducting, if they're ETs, again, let's not get bogged down in the language, but the aliens were abducting these individuals. And the military wanted to know what was so special about these individuals. So they started using old school MK Ultra techniques, where they would then embed an alternative persona within that abductee that would remember these encounters. Because don't forget, the ETs are using screen memories, layer upon layer upon layer, so that the abductees have no idea and very little recollection of what's actually gone on in these craft and in these bases. So the military used a very clever techniques where they'd essentially embed an alter who was acting as a spy that the abductee wasn't even aware existed within themselves. Then the military come along, they abduct the abductee, take them sometimes via using the T3RBs or other craft, or just general military vehicles, taking them to underground bases, sometimes undersea bases, to then debrief them. And in order to debrief them, what they have to do is awaken the alter. So they'll use trauma techniques to switch from the regular abductee, who at this point is generally terrified about what's going on, what do the military want with him. He's then further, each individual will have their own trigger, they'll flick the switch them to the altar, and the altar, who is acting as the military spy, if you like, then can disclose information about what happened aboard these craft. Now, I know that was a long-winded explanation and it's very complicated, but what you have to understand about this phenomenon is it is very complicated, because even though you're dealing with altars that remember huge chunks of information, they're also then deprogrammed by the military. It's a very unusual phenomena, and it's very difficult to get your head around. And maybe that's why it isn't talked about as much as it should be. I think there's another reason for that, but we can get into that another time. But essentially, it's ingenious, really, that the military are essentially using these individuals as spies. And you might be thinking, well, okay, well, Chris, what is it that they want off these guys? What's so special about this person? A lot of the time, they don't necessarily know what it is about a person. Often it's something to do with genetics. For the most part, this person might have information about a certain piece of tech, alien tech, for example. The military might have found a down craft that they need access to. And this person's got the genetics or DNA. James Bartley sometimes calls it a resonance blueprint that allows them or can gain access to this craft via their genetics. I know it sounds absolutely bizarre, but this is being what these reports are coming back from these abductees and contactees all the time. The military, for example, don't know how to get into a craft or don't know how to operate a craft. They will then use these Milabs, interview them, or interrogate them, rather, is probably a better way of putting it, and then gain that information. And then what they also do is, for the next abduction from the ETs, the military are then lining up the next mission. We need this, we need that. And that's all given to this altar. And then when the military return this the Milab to the house, by that point, they've used MK techniques to switch them back to the normal persona that isn't even aware that this altar exists. I mean, it's an absolutely bizarre phenomenon, but it's quite ingenious. And if you don't know or haven't looked into the MK Ultra techniques, they're probably not using, in fact, I know they're not using the old school techniques now. I think they're a little bit more sophisticated than that. But certainly investigate and go right back to the beginning of MK Ultra to understand how this whole phenomena got started, because not only is it ingenious how they can embed numerous alters within one individual, there are numerous abilities that can be embedded within different individuals, or indeed enhanced or brought out, which is another part of the Milab thing. So you can see why I want to make a film about this, because it's a very complex subject, but fascinating. And whilst there's still a good portion of conjecture in there, there's certainly enough information to put a good picture together about this phenomena. So now let's give a few shout outs to other channels, because a lot of whether it be people that I've worked with in the past, whether it be people that I've been in contact with recently who are looking to do their own thing. So let's give a shout out to 401 Files. So that's Ben from 401 Files. If you're not familiar with Ben's channel, you check it out on YouTube. It's the 401 Files, and Ben looks into any number of subjects. He does a lot of UFO stuff, cryptid stuff, paranormal stuff, and bits of wild camping. So it's right up my street. That's the sort of stuff that I'm into. It seems to be the stuff that is very certainly bushcrafting and the paranormal seem to be going together. There's a few guys out there doing that now, so it's amazing, really. I love that stuff. So check Ben's channel out. Another channel that's gaining a lot of followers and interest, obviously, is Paul Sinclair's channel, the Truth Proof channel on YouTube. And Paul and Les, who Les helps him run the show, Les Drake, they sometimes do a live show on a Friday. Sometimes it's every other Friday, but So just subscribe to Paul's channel to keep updated with his the Dark Forest project, which is something Paul's working on at the moment. That's going to be released, I think, early next year. And it's a good place to keep up with Paul's research, because Paul, as you know, gets sightings and encounters and witness reports in usually every week, at least every week. So check Paul's channel out and keep up to date with that. The other channel, give a shout out to the BBR channel, which is Deborah Hatswell channel, which is the British cryptid channel. Deborah Hatswell is the girl, the lady that put together the British Bigfoot map. If you're not familiar with that map, then you need to get over across to Deb's channel, get subscribed to that channel, and you'll find out Deb does usually 2 shows a week, I would imagine, on average, and she talks about all the latest accounts. Sometimes she's now starting to get witnesses on live on the channel. And these sightings, what's incredible about both Paul and Deb's channel is that they are prime examples, really. You've just got 2 people that are taking these sightings, and they just keep coming in. Day after day after day after day after day, these sightings just keep coming in. And it's something that is probably, I think it's underappreciated by those not in the know, that what I've been fortunate enough to work with Paul and Deb, and what they probably don't talk a lot about is that there are cases, and the skeptics are not going to like this, but there are cases that they just cannot talk about. I certainly know this of Deb, and I certainly, because with Elusive, there was some photographs that we couldn't use in Elusive one, that both Deb and I wanted them in the show, but out of respect for the witness, Deb, we didn't do that. And with Paul, there are a number of things that we didn't include in bringing down the light. A number of cases that we converse about, even last week, we conversed about cases that Paul just can't talk about these things. 1, he hasn't got the permission to talk about it. And 2, if you start talking about information that witnesses give to you privately, that's a good way of never getting a witness to come to you ever again. So I think that both Paul and Deb, and myself really, I think we're kind of respected because we don't do that. I don't think, if you want to get into this and you want to start taking accounts, one of the first things you should do is know where the line is. And sometimes that's really difficult to do, because it's exciting when you get these and you hear about these encounters and you can't talk about them. You just ask Paul and Deborah and some of the other guys like James Bartley. There are cases that they just can't talk about for whatever reason. It's usually down to privacy of the witness, or it's down to safety, which is something that more so in Paul's case, because there are certain witness encounters, things might include the military, for example, where some things are a little bit like a hot potato, and you've got to know where the line is. And I think Paul manages that very well. And I'm the same, and Deb's probably the same. I certainly know that some of the other cryptid researchers are the same, is that sometimes if you're working on something specific, you have a certain idea in your mind. You don't necessarily want to disclose the methodology and where it is you're heading, because if you're heading in a direction, that can be where a report or an encounter can push you off that track that might not necessarily be legit. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about. And that does happen, despite, our best intentions. You still do get witness encounters, and the odd person that isn't being, that's being a little bit disingenuous for whatever reason. That's certainly happened to me. So you've just got to be aware of that. Again, that's another thing to probably be aware of if you're going to get into this stuff. So check out those 2 channels. Check out Ben's 401, Truth Proof, BBR. And if you want me to give your channel a shout out, if you're into this stuff, so don't forget also that if you've been a witness to a cryptid account, if you've got any really amazing encounters that you want to feature in Elusive 2. If you watched the first one, if you haven't, go and watch it. You'll know that the encounters that were featured in the first one were all really fascinating encounters with good detail in there. And again, I think that's why I think people that have watched it really enjoyed it, because you can see that what's happening in those interviews is absolutely legitimate, in my opinion. And that's hard as well, because I'm fortunate enough to be in the company of the witness, and that's something that the viewer can't have. It's just not possible. But I think that's part of, it's part of this thing. It's part of the phenomena. It's part of the research. It's part of getting into this game. And sometimes there's a price to pay for being in this game. So for whatever that might be for different individuals. So what I will say at this point is that we need more people in this game, and it seems to me that there's still researchers coming out there, but I think we need more channels. I think we need more people talking about stuff. We don't know what's going to happen with this subject, the ufology and cryptids and anything unusual. I mean, it's certainly nothing to do with conspiracy, that. So we're really hoping that YouTube doesn't touch that. I mean, there are policies now coming in around stuff that's happened with the politics in America and whatnot. Certainly the politics and all the COVID thing here. So we're just hoping that our audience, I think the audience is certainly being squeezed, whether that's by YouTube's new analytics bots or whether it's on purpose. But let's just hope that they still allow us to do what we like to do, because YouTube, for all its ills, is still I love YouTube, and it's something. It's got the reach, essentially, hasn't it? And I know that many of some of my friends have lost their YouTube channels. People that I'm acquaintance with have lost their YouTube channels and gone across to BitChute. And there are other competitors coming now, so I think it certainly pays if you've got a channel and you're talking about this stuff. Certainly what I would do is download all your content, stick it on a hard drive and get it duplicated across to one of the other platforms. I think we'll be okay, personally. I think we're going to be all right talking about this stuff on here. There's certainly a big resurgence in this stuff in the media at the moment. You'll see a lot of TV shows like Unexplained Mysteries and the Alaska Triangle and that kind of thing, talking about this stuff. So hopefully we can keep this stuff going, and I'll look forward to speaking to you guys again soon.